I wanted to highlight Sabrina Carpenter on Good Morning America talking about her album release. And she made what I thought was a really funny comment about not caring about what Tommy from Arkansas thought about her album and the album covers, which kind of got a bit of controversy just because a lot of people thought that it wasn't sending the right message. And for me, I thought just her coming out and saying that she doesn't care about some random person who is not actually her target audience is exactly what companies should be doing, right? Like you can't appeal to everybody and you shouldn't. So the fact that she's just like full on just like owning it is just something I think that a lot of brands can use for themselves. That the main thing that you should be focusing on here is making your target audience happy and having them understand where you're coming from and what it is that you're building. I also like that it's just kind of shown her progression as like being like a Disney star to being a more like grown up artist, through it all still continuing to grow her audience. So it's like showing that you can have an evolution of like your brand of like where you started to like where you're going, and then through the process continue keeping your core audience happy and then growing a new one as you're building, because you're still keeping true to yourself and like what you think and like how you're building your audience.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about good marketing, right? That like every product or products aren't for everybody
Hmm.
necessarily, right? And in this case, the Sabrina Carpenter brand, her music, what she's all about, it's not for everybody.
Right.
And the sooner that brands embrace that, the better off they'll be. Of course, there are some products that everybody does use.
Yeah.
In those cases, like soap, right? But I'm
Yeah, yeah,
sure
yeah.
even then they still have their core demographics. But yeah, I like that she was acknowledging, like, yeah, this isn't for this person.
Hmm.
However, that being said, I think the irony is that Tommy from Arkansas probably loves her album cover. Maybe not her music, but
Right.
probably has a poster of that album
Yeah.
hanging up
Well,
on
that's
his
been
ceiling.
interesting, right? Because part of like what I've been seeing, even the like the controversy behind the album cover, it's funny to me that she mentioned it being a man, as opposed to most of what I saw was women saying that like, oh, she's pushing feminism back or like she's sending the wrong message. It was illuminating because you could see both sides kind of argue their points that I don't think she was actually trying to make one
Mhm.
way or the other. It was just kind of, she's kind of putting that out there. And, she did come out and speak and say, oh, like people need to get out more. Like that's not even what I had intended. It's just how I had been thinking about it. And I think that that's something that we've seen with a lot of artists these days, right? Where they're kind of, put something out and then people read into it a little too much and then they take it one way or the other. And so that's building on this whole idea of like being parasocial with like artists who are trying to push the boundaries. That's a lot of what they do, and they're trying to explore who they are and what they're doing, and all that. Um and I feel like with her, it's been interesting to kind of see how she grew so popular last year. And I think part of it is because she created a specific persona where it's more for the female gaze, not the male gaze. But part of what I had started realizing is that, yes, she's kind of going more for like that female gaze, which I think is following more along the lines of what like Taylor Swift has been doing, right? Where it's like, she's creating music more for a female audience versus for like the male audience. And I feel like Sabrina Carpenter is also like following them. But I also see it as like she just, won 2 Grammys for like her last album. So I feel like she's trying to push that boundary now that she can. You're also seeing it in how she's creating music and like her lyrics, right? Like, because her lyrics all kind of have like jokes or like, play on like words that she's, saying. Like her music videos, like she's usually killing a man or she's killing, Jenna Ortega in that one music video. So that's like part of how she kind of is playing with like her audience. And I think her audience is along with her on that journey.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not following her career super, super
Mhm.
closely, but I have felt like she's come up in the past year. She is conventionally attractive, walking around with no pants and stuff.
That's
I
the
like her
Met Gala
songs.
appearance.
Yeah, I like her songs,
Yeah.
but also that she is very clever
Mhm.
in all her wordplay. Like, she is really funny. So there's something about it that while she is conventionally attractive, and I mean, I think she does appeal to the male gaze, but in doing so, she also has this sort of knowing aura and
Mhm.
vibe about her where it makes you think that she's above it at the same
Mhm.
time or like she's in on the joke. So
Right.
I think she's been a lot of fun to watch. I think what was confusing about the album art was that it looked like it was very much going full tilt into the male gaze and
Mhm.
like this is the kind of sex appeal that she's wanting to convey now, which she's free to do. That's her
Mhm.
art. What was tough about all that discourse around feminism was one, did she say it was feminist? I don't think she did.
No.
I believe it was not feminism. However, I'm not saying that's what she said, right? Like
Right, right, right,
I'm
right.
not putting words into her mouth.
Mhm.
What I believe is it's her art. She's free to do what she wants. She's free to express herself how she wants to and
Mhm.
to create the art that she wants to make. But do I find that liberating for myself as a woman? No. I don't
Yeah, but I
think
mean
it's
that's a
for
lot to
me.
put that's a lot
Yeah.
to put on an artist that it's like, "Oh, if you say you're a feminist, then it should be like, this way." I think that's part of, the argument of feminism is that you're able to have the different opinions and not one thing is feminist versus another.
Right.
Um
And that's true, right?
mhm,
it's about freedom, but the other thing too is that it's supposed to be about like true feminism, right? Isn't it supposed to be about addressing the patriarchal structures that uphold the conventional things,
mhm,
right? So ergo by appealing to the male gaze, going into that direction of looking like a submissive person in that album art, that's not feminism
mhm.
because it is playing to the existing patriarchal structures, and she isn't doing anything to dispel that. And again, I'm not and what I
Yeah.
say is, I'm not saying that she said she's going to do that or
Mhm.
that she has to. Like I said, she's free to do as she pleases. I just believe that that's not feminism. That's all.
So she kind of addressed that in the Good Morning America interview. She did say that it was a metaphor. She said, "If I'm being completely transparent, I don't do anything anticipating what the reaction will be. When I came up with the imaging for Man's Best Friend, it was so clear to me what it meant. So the reaction is fascinating to me. You just watch it unravel and go, wow." She kind of ended up turning around because then she released a couple more variants of the album cover. One of them she kind of like trolled and said it's God approved. What kind of, she's just kind of like pushing back on like this isn't
Yeah.
about people's reactions or like the way that they think about it, which on the one hand, like makes sense because like she's an artist, she's like wanting to do that. But on the other hand, it's like she is, a public figure and people are gonna have opinions on like what she's putting out there. So I think that is similar to like how brands and like companies should think about like what they're putting out there. Like I know it's like really difficult to like recognize what's going to be positive, what's going to be negative. A lot of the times, a lot of the ideas that we're putting out there, they're meant to be positive, right? Like we're just thinking about it. I mean, just even thinking back on the Sydney Sweeney American Eagle controversy, right? Where it's like, I don't think that they had meant for it to become that negative of a thing, which kind of showed in how they responded. Somewhere with the Cracker Barrel response, right? Like where a lot of these things become controversial and then they kind of have to figure out how to respond like last minute. One thing I liked in the way that Sabrina Carpenter responded was with humor, right? It was just kind of like pushing back a little bit, trolling people. And that kind of fits like her brand. So she's built that brand around herself that like she jokes around a lot. She has a lot of play on words and that's included in her music and her persona. I mean, one of the ways that I started hearing about her was I heard espresso obviously, but she had that little riff that she would change every for her concerts, right? And it was like sexual in nature, but it was like funny and humorous.
Yeah, I think it was the song Nonsense, and she would
Hmm.
change it for each country or region that she went to.
Yeah.
So, for instance, she was in Australia
Hmm.
and she changed the line to when you go down under, do you miss me?
Yeah.
So it's always some kind of pun
Yeah.
or,
Yeah. Yeah.
clever little joke about the country. I thought it was really funny. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I thought
no,
it was great. I
definitely.
liked it.
Exactly. And then for the I think when she went on tour, what she was doing was like different sexual positions at like each concert. So it's kind of part of her brand that she does this. The main lesson here is how you respond, like your strategy should match your brand voice and like what people expect from you. And I think that that's one thing she did well here. Another thing too here is how she's like resisting that urge to please everybody. She's, really honing in on her core audience of like, these are my fans. They know me. They know what I do. And they're going to follow me on their journey. And so far she's been right, right? They've kind of, come out to like defend her, defend the artwork. And in the process, she's also been growing an audience because she's, maintained her core audience, continue to like make art for them, the music for them, but then bringing in new people because she's staying true to herself and like what she's, putting out there and like her whole vibe and energy. So I think she's doing that really well.
Yeah, I think that's what makes her so fun to watch. It's true that she isn't trying to appeal to everybody. She isn't trying to please everybody, and she isn't apologizing for who she is.
Yeah.
And I think that's fun to see
Mm-hmm.
even if you're not a true fan,
Mm-hmm.
it is, she's interesting and she's
Mm-hmm.
fun to watch.
It's also consistent, right? Like the sexual innuendo and then like the fun, it's mixed into everything. Like the music videos, like she's using those as a way to like show who she is. And I think that's a really interesting way of being an artist these days because like there's so many more options that you kind of have to do something to stand out, And I think she's kind of gotten that figured out.